Nigerians must be very careful. Nigerians are very bold and ignorant. They must be very careful. And they mustn't seek for war. War is never a solution, because the war doesn't only kill those that are that. We are saying just leave. Just leave the country, leave our sisters, leave our kids.
I've watched this video several times, and honestly, I struggle with how to respond to the video, because I understand that every country has the right to control its borders. I understand that South Africa has immigration laws. I understand that if someone's in a country illegally, the government has every right to enforce its immigration laws. But when I hear person telling Nigerians, you better leave our country, we know how to fight you, I have to pause. Because before you tell Nigerians to leave South Africa, let us remember our history. Let us go back way before social media. Long before social media made it possible for us to see what is happening in another country instantly, there was a time when Nigeria was deeply invested in the struggle of Black South Africans, a time when South Africans were fighting against apartheid. And Nigeria stood with them. Nigeria provided financial support. Nigeria contributed to the struggle. In 1976, the Nigerian government raised millions of dollars to support victims of apartheid and fund educational programs. Nigerian public servants, military officers, and civil workers voluntarily donated a percentage of their monthly salaries to the liberation cause, while students skipped meals to contribute. South African students were given opportunities to study in Nigeria. Nigerians supported liberation movements. Nigerians joined international boycotts against apartheid. They blocked oil supplies to South Africans and nationalized British petroleum assets in 1976. After discovering the company was leaking oil to the apartheid regime, Nigeria used its diplomatic and economic influence to pressure all the apartheid regime. The Nigerian government issued hundreds of emergency national passports to South Africans, freedom fighters and exiles, enabling them to travel globally to rally support. And when Nelson Mandela was released from prison in 1990, Nigeria was one of the first countries he visited. Nigerian support was not something Mandela simply forgot. In fact, Mandela publicly acknowledged Nigerian contribution to the struggle. So when I hear people today saying, Nigerians go back home, I cannot help but ask, when South Africa was fighting for freedom, where was Nigeria? We were there. We stood with you people. And this is not me saying South Africa owes Nigeria the right to live there forever. No, that's not. South Africa is a sovereign country. Nigeria is also a sovereign country. Every country has the right to determine who enters, who stays, and who leaves the country. But there is a difference between enforcing immigration law and creating an atmosphere where an entire group of Africans feels haunted. That is the problem. Because what we are seeing now goes beyond immigration. There have been demonstrations before. It just didn't start today. It's been there years back. Xenophobic attack. There have been threats. People have been killed because of this. There have been reports of business being looted or destroyed. Foreign nationals have been intimidated severally, and people have been forced to leave because they are afraid of their lives. The movement known as March and March called for undocumented foreign nationals to leave South Africa, with June set as the unofficial deadline, and the demonstration became widespread. On June 30th alone, analysis recorded nearly 100 demonstrations against illegal migration. Thousands of people participated. And foreign nationals from countries including Ghana, Nigeria, Malawi, Mozambique, Uganda, and so many other African countries have been leaving South Africa amid the pressure. And this is where I want to ask a very serious question. What happens when an immigration problem becomes hatred for foreigners? Because we need to be very careful. If somebody commits a crime, arrest that person. If somebody is undocumented, enforce the immigration law. If somebody is doing something illegal, prosecute that person. But don't take that action of one individual and use them to condemn an entire nationality. Because Nigerians are not a crime. Ghana, Malawi, and other African countries are not a crime. We are Africans. And now something else is happening, and I find it extremely disturbing. People are being stopped from accessing health care. There have been documented reports of foreign nationals being blocked from accessing clinics and hospitals. But the problem is that these incidents are happening. We saw videos where security groups blocked migrants from accessing public health care. The South African Human Rights Commission has also raised concern about the unlawful denial of health care to non-nationals and undocumented people. And that should frighten all of us, because when someone is sick, when someone's child is sick, when someone is pregnant, when someone is fighting for their life, their passports or country should not determine whether they deserve medical treatment or not. They are human beings. Life first, life matters. And this is not only about undocumented people. Even documented foreigners are now scared. People who have papers, people who have businesses, people who have lived there for years, people who have built families over there, people who have children who are South African. Imagine having a South African wife. Imagine having a South African children. Imagine building your entire life in South Africa. And suddenly you are being told to go back to your country. Where does that leave the family? What happens to the children? What happens to the family? What happens to the marriage? What happens to the life he has built? What happens to everything that the person has built? And then there are the businesses. I've watched videos circulating online showing foreign-owned business being looted, attacked in some cases. People appearing to hand businesses over to locals. Business you don't know anything about. And honestly, I keep asking myself, how did we get here? Because some of these businesses were not handed to these foreigners. They built this business. They found a space. They saw a market. They saw a gap. They saw something that was not being properly provided, and they filled the gap. But you have been there. And maybe they started with just one small shop. Maybe they borrowed money to start this business. Maybe they worked from morning till night for this business to be where it is today. And then suddenly, because they are foreigners, someone wants to take over the business. How is that fair? Business you don't know anything about. I've seen videos where people are apparently being told to hand over foreign-owned businesses to locals. And I want to ask, where was the struggle when this person was building this business? Where were you when they were working? Where were you when they were paying for rent? Where were you when they were losing money? Where were you when they were sleeping late because they were trying to make the business survive? And all of a sudden you want to take over. You cannot simply wait until something becomes successful and then say, you are a foreigner, give it to us. That is not how a healthy economy works. Competition is supposed to make a business better, not violence, not intimidation. It doesn't work that way. Not xenophobia. And if there is a problem with foreigners operating businesses illegally, then let the government investigate those businesses. If someone is breaking the law, prosecute them, but don't destroy the business because of the nationality of its owner. And let me take you back to something personal. When I was growing up, I remember hearing about Rwanda, Tutsi War and all of that. Then we were very little, we do go to block rosary to go and pray. As children, we heard about people we are suffering in Africa. We knew that they were our brothers and we always put them in our prayers. Because in our mind, we understand that another African suffering is our concern. That is the Africa I remember. An Africa where we cared when another African was suffering. So what happened? How did we get to this point where an African can look at another African and say, you don't belong here, go back to your country? How did we get to a point where people are afraid because of the country written on their passport? And I want us to remember something else. When South Africans were fighting apartheid, Nigeria did not just make speeches. Nigerians sacrificed. Nigerians raised money. Nigerians supported South African liberation. Nigerians provided educational opportunities to Nigerians even contributed part of their salaries to the struggle. There was a popular saying, often referred to as the Mandela tax. Ordinary Nigerians were contributing to a struggle that was happening in South African country. Why? Because they believed that the South African freedom was African freedom. This is the spirit I am talking about, not entitlement. I'm not saying South Africa belongs to Nigeria. No, we don't belong to South Africa. But what I'm saying is that we once understood that African problems could not be treated as somebody else's problem. And this is why I find what is happening today so painful. Because some of the people being targeted are not criminals. They are just business people. They are traders, they are hairdressers, they are shop owners, they are mummies, restaurant owners, mechanic, professionals. People who simply crossed a border looking for an opportunity. And yes, some people may be undocumented. Then deal that through the law. But being undocumented should not make somebody less human. And being documented should not mean you have to live in fear because of a mob has decided you don't belong. Nigeria has already brought about 1,490 Nigerians home through voluntary evacuation in response to xenophobic attack and security concerns. They abandoned their businesses and belongings because they were scared of their lives. And that is heartbreaking. Because imagine building a life somewhere else. Imagine having your business there, having your children, having your family. You've lived there for a very long time. Imagine marrying a South African wife. Imagine being South African citizen. Then suddenly, because of rising hatred towards foreigners, you are being told to leave, that you don't belong here. Where exactly does that family go? Where exactly does that children go? What happens to the marriage? What happens to the business that the person spent years building? These are real human beings, not statistics. Not just foreigners, human beings. And this is why I believe that there must be a better way to do this thing. If South Africa does not want undocumented foreigners in the country, then enforce the immigration laws. If you want foreigners to leave, let the government handle it legally. Give people proper notice. Give them due process. Work with their governments. Use diplomacy. Don't just take laws into your hands. Don't allow citizens to take the law into their own hands. Don't allow mobs to decide who belongs to a country and who does not belong. Don't destroy someone's businesses because of their nationality. And most importantly, don't turn African against Africans. Because hatred does not solve unemployment. Hatred does not solve crime. Hatred does not fix the country's economy. Hatred does not create jobs. Hatred does not make a country much more safer. It only creates another problem. And I also want to say something to Nigerians. Please, let us not respond with hatred. Let us not start attacking South Africans living in Nigeria. It doesn't make sense. Let us not destroy South African businesses. Let us not threaten innocent South Africans. Because if we retaliate against innocent people, here, we become part of the same problem we are complaining about. Let's use diplomacy, not war, not revenge, not retaliation. It's not going to solve anything, because when one person in South Africa says, we know how to fight you, my answer to the person on the video, we don't want to fight you, South Africans. We don't want war. We don't want South Africans who are in Nigeria to leave Nigerians. We are one, we are brothers. We don't want Nigerians to be killed in South Africa. We don't want Africans fighting Africans. There's nothing to gain from it. We want just peace. We want justice. We want government to do their jobs. And above everything, we want to remember that we are Africans. The same continent, same history of colonialism, the same history of struggle, the same history of people fighting for freedom. Nigerians stood with South Africa during Apartheid. And today, South Africa is a free country. So please, let us not allow the freedom our parents fought for to become another reason for Africans to hate one another. If you don't want undocumented foreigners in your country, use the law. If you have concerns about immigration, use diplomacy. If someone commits a crime, arrest the individual, but don't punish an entire nationality. Because tomorrow, the same thing could happen to another African somewhere else. An African cannot survive like that. We need one another. Nigeria needs South Africa. South Africa needs Nigerian. We need each other. And the rest of Africa needs each other. We are stronger together. So to the Nigerian watching this, please, I want you to be safe. To the South Africans watching this, we are not your enemies. And to our African leaders, please do something before this hatred becomes something much bigger. Because we have seen where hatred can lead. We have seen Rwanda, we have seen Apartheid, we have seen xenophobia. We don't need another chapter of African history written in blood. Let us choose dialogue. Let us choose justice. Let us choose humanity. And most importantly, let love lead.